Attention! All things shared in this video are simply the opinions of the Unexplained Files. The following footage is not tampered with, and all of the events and reactions are unplanned and genuine.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Unexplained Files. We have a nice, chill, relaxed podcast for you. It's been a while since we've done a nice, just relaxed chatting podcast. We've been very investigation heavy and case file heavy and very information dense.
Tis the season.
Yeah, best time to get out for it. This is when we started investigating last year, so we're making most of that nicer weather before it gets abysmal and cold and awful.
I was saying that I heard it was supposed to drop to possibly 4 degrees over the weekend. So what? I'm sure they probably mean night temperatures, but
fingers crossed, because we tend to go out towards the night, but that would be, I imagine, real early hours that would be doing that.
Yeah.
But here we are, nice. We have some awesome stuff for the channel there.
And we have good news.
Yeah.
We have finally got over the 500 subscribers.
Woo-hoo!
I think when I looked earlier, it was on 503.
Really?
Yeah, so thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you for
Appreciate
supporting. The channel's seen a fair bit of rapid growth in the last month or so. We've been flying up. I must admit, to get to 300 to 400 felt like it took years. To get to 400 to 500, I blinked and it just went gone.
Yeah.
It really didn't feel like it took that long.
I remember seeing when we was at 473, I think it was, and it stayed there for ages, a month or two, and didn't even move. And I was like, oh god.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, we started getting quite a few rapidly.
And there's always that moment of panic when you hit a certain number and you upload and it goes down by 1 or 2, up or 1 or 2, and it sits there and you're just like, it's game over. That was a good run. But I mean,
gave it our best.
Yeah. How are you doing anyway? We always usually jump straight into it, but we don't check in with us. How's life keeping you?
All right.
That's all
Work.
right. Work.
Work. Bills.
Yeah.
The usual. It's like a cycle, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Sleep. Get up. Work.
Yeah. And
Bills.
at the beginning of this, it wasn't too bad, for me, because I weren't working. But now I feel that. I mean, I don't work. My hours are up and down, left and right. So sometimes, some weeks I barely work, but sometimes I'm there all the time. And it's even I feel that on the slower weeks where I'm just I felt like I've just woken up in the early hours, come home, slept, and woke up and gone out again. And then these investigations, they're crucial to get out.
And that's the problem, isn't it, with our jobs, when we both start early, because we're up at 4 in the morning.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And then, you definitely have to have a nap when you get home, because going out at night to investigate after hardly any sleep is
and weirdly enough, in the winter, it's probably easier doing it like that, because by the time you wake up, it's between 1 and 3 somewhere near there, depending on how smashed you are. And then it's already starting to get dark. So if you wanted to, you could just go straight out, get it done, come back, and you ain't got to worry about it. But when it's not getting dark till 9, 10 o'clock, and you're just shit.
Yeah, see, that's the only problem, isn't it? You got the swings and roundabouts. The summer, you got the nice weather, but then you need to get out later. In the winter, you're not too sure whether it's going to be peeing down with rain. But then again, even the summers now, you can't tell.
Another thing about winter as well is depending on the location, it can get blisteringly cold. The one major investigation where I was this ain't all, I'm not happy with this, was the church in Braunton. Well, we've been there a few times now, and the first couple of times we went there, we had some cool interactions, the spirit talker saying it was exciting that we were there, and cat balls going off on the bench, and even further back at the back of the graveyard, stuff coming up in the spirit talker. The same place we went where the dog walker terrified us when we jumped out.
That was at Bishop's Taunton.
Yeah. That in the winter was brutal. And there wasn't a great deal that happened. We had some security lights go on, which was odd because it was down a path that creatures couldn't get down. And
because that was the one off to the side of the church, wasn't it?
Because I thought maybe it's an animal or something, but there's nowhere for it to go. anything like
No,
that.
you would have seen it.
And I think we had cat balls golf the second time we went there as well, actually.
Yeah, when we had them on that ledge, I think.
And like when we first got there, I saw like lights, sort of like not lights, but like flashes, like in the distance, like over the graves in that sort of direction as well. So it's a really good location to go to, but the weather was just absolutely brutal. I was freezing. It wasn't like unbearable. You could have stayed out there and done it, but you're a lot more limited in what you can do, because even it gets to the point where the cold even affects the equipment sometimes. Like cameras are suffering out in the cold. Where you've been holding them, if you're breathing when it's closer to you, it starts to like fucking mist up and frost up on it, so you've got to be careful of that. But thankfully we're out here in the chilling in the summer and enjoying it. I think we'll have to plan some locations indoors that we can visit for investigations, maybe some bigger ones. We can do some like Bodmin chair investigations.
Yeah, we definitely. I really want to go back there because that was
absolutely
cool.
So if we plan that right, we can, and they're sort of longer videos, because when you go to Bodmin chair, if you film right, you could probably get a couple of good investigations out.
I wonder if that's the wrong time of year to go when we went, because we did go. Was it October or was it late September?
October, I think.
Yeah, because everyone's probably wanting to go there around Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it was an interesting spot. One, because there were so many people. I don't know if that affects it. But two, because it didn't particularly feel. There were certain parts for me that felt like freaky, but not all of it. But yeah, I don't know whether that time of year just changes the mood of everything, because everyone's spooky season and they're like making the most out of it. So.
I think it's probably more just your mind of where you are, and because it's like. When I was there, when I went to that bit on my own, I was like started feeling freaked out, because obviously you're on your own. And then the last investigation when we was back at the Lenwood Centre, when I was in that room on my own, because I had just that massive open room behind me, all I kept thinking was something's going to run up behind me.
See that would, I'd be terrified in that, because I'm one of those people where like when I'm in those spaces, I'm terrified of seeing something out the corner of my eye. So first I'd be worried about that, but then I'd be like fixated on the camera screen, just like, is there anything over my shoulder?
Yeah, well that's what I was thinking, because the only reason I weren't like that freaked out is because I was focusing on what I was doing. If we was just there investigating on our own, no equipment or anything, I was just stood there looking around, then I'd be like,
there are a lot of times when I'm so, well not so, but like when I could quite easily be like overly freaked out, but just to focus on filming gets me through that and cruises me by, and I'm like, right, there we go. It's cool that we've been able to get back out and investigating stuff. We've definitely got to keep the pace up for it.
Like, I like doing all the other stuff, but definitely investigating is my favourite.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously, it gets you out and about, you get to see different places, and
it's your own
gives
experience
you an
as well.
adrenaline rush.
It does, yeah. It's nice. It's like fun things to look forward to. Remember, going out and getting stressed out. Yeah, sort of not controlled stress, but kind of is good for you, I think. But yeah,
I like it.
We'll definitely keep it out throughout the year. It's like some people have like ice baths. We go out and do this, and it keeps us just stressed enough at the right time.
In the winter, it's kind of similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Cold
stress and cold. Yeah. Yeah, no, we've got some cool like inns and places we can go visit and stuff. But it's like if we want an investigation every other week, we're gonna have to proper plan out. But then we could do it where it's just like if we get a bigger investigation, so it's 2 episodes and we spread that out, then we can still keep the content going at a manageable and affordable pace.
Yeah, and if you look at other paranormal channels, they're not putting out an investigation every week. They might do one every few weeks or so.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not sustainable to do it every week.
Every other week is a good pace. Yeah. As long as we can plan around it, it'll be fine. Because we have got other series that we do. Like, it's been a while since we've done a podcast, so we've got this opportunity. We haven't done any reacts for a while either, so we have got things we can jump between, which like help ease the pressure of it. But then we just got to plan it out properly and do stuff like that.
But if everyone watching likes the investigations, they're every other week anyway, so it's not like they're few and far between. Yeah. So.
And in a way, if we were able to do like your Bodmin Jail or the White Hart Inn and places like that, if we can end off a video where it's like next time you get to look forward to this sort of stuff with previews and stuff, it might be quite cool for people to be able to be excited for what's upcoming. And fingers crossed we'll be able to up the amount of content that's coming out, so there'll be more content to enjoy. But if you are one of those people that loves the investigations, and that's what they're there for, there should be a good amount of that to keep people entertained.
Yeah, definitely. So let's have a drum roll. What have we got?
Today's today's podcast. It's going to be a casual one because we've been doing a lot of like, I wouldn't call it educational, but like kind of informative stuff where it's very heavily themed around the facts and the history of something. But there was a cryptid creature, ghost, like strange character that I encountered. I say I encountered, I didn't come face to face with it, but I heard about it some years ago now. My first time like hearing about this creature was through a game, funnily enough, through Assassin's Creed Syndicate. There were talks in Victoria, London of a creature known as spring-heeled Jack. And at first, I'd only ever heard about it being like in London until I did a bit more research. And it's this strange character, usually around like Victorian times. I don't know if it was like sort of 1860s, maybe to the 1890s, that sort of year period, where there's a couple of supposed accounts of people being attacked by this creature. Some where it's just sightings, and then a lot of people say that it kind of took over and became a sensation that people blamed things on, or it kind of went up and down the nation of like, what is this thing? And we're seeing it, and now it's everywhere. But weirdly enough, a bit like Mothman, but further back.
Well, that's what I was thinking when I was looking into it. Like when they gave certain parts of the description, I was thinking that's like kind of similar to Mothman in a way, but not. Not
it's just the way that it was a very short period of time that it was known for, and the accounts are scarce, but they sort of appear wildly all of a sudden, and then they just vanish as if they never happened. But like this creature, spring-heeled Jack, that from all of the most consistent things that are said about it, it seems to be like mostly like your average height looking man with like quite well off clothes, so like a well put together suit. Some say he's got reddish skin, some say he hasn't. He has a kind of stereotypical like demon of the time complexion, so like red skin, small horns, but then fucking mustache and sort of things like that. And some people say he's got like really long unkept claws, some people say they're quite trim, and he's got this like, some say like he's very well spoken and like has a charm to him, and others say you just barely understand what he's saying, it just like whatever. But the reason it's known as spring-heeled Jack was because it's known to sort of just leap and sprint into wherever it's being seen if it attacks or something like that.
Jump at like crazy heights.
And then
like
it just escapes by
but
like
then
sprinting and leaping
the
away.
other descriptions I saw of it, that it had red eyes and breathed like a blue flame.
Yeah.
I was like, that's weird.
It is very strange. But and obviously spring-heeled Jack, because it's known for being able to jump crazy high. Some people say it can jump a building, some people in its escape it can jump like 9-10 foot like
I
in
heard
the
people
high and
saying
stuff like
about
that.
Jumping up, just springing over fences and stuff like that to get
so
away.
hence the name spring-heeled Jack, the idea that it could just leap over things and run away.
So one of the earliest documented cases occurred in London in 1837, where a young woman named Mary Stevens was allegedly attacked by a strange figure with a frightening appearance and the ability to leap incredible heights. But there's a few. Another one, Jane
I'd heard of a couple.
1838. And then I know it said it was seen up in like Liverpool as well. I think the last sighting was, where does it say? The last reported sighting occurred in 1904 in Liverpool. 1904, So
it seems to be this commonality of but it usually seems to attack women from everything I've heard, and even the people who, after the woman screamed, a bunch of people sort of ran to her to see what's going on.
Get this vision of like mix between Mothman and Jack the Ripper.
In a weird way, but it sort of caused, I don't know if you'd call it a hysteria, but it certainly caused a craze of like up and down the country. There were people claiming that they'd seen this creature or a creature sort of similar in description. I know in passing it said that, like you mentioned, that up in Liverpool there were sightings. I can't remember if it said there was some in Scotland as well, and sort of up and down, like it never made its way to the West Country, I don't think, but up and down the main stretch of the country there was things about it.
I'm sure I remember reading ages ago that there were even sightings going back into the 1600s. And
really?
Yeah.
Blimey.
So
my first hearing of it was in like the 1800s. I mean, even when you said 1830s, I was like, blimey, that's even early for it. But it seems to be that it like attacks women and then just vanishes. But even the people who sort of came to the aid of this woman said that the thing they noticed about it was incredibly quick when it was running away, and it just leapt over effortlessly, like escaping these things.
So I remember reading that there was all kinds of theories. Some people thought it was like a devil type creature. Some people thought it was just like a prankster, like wearing some kind of weird clothing and like with, gadgets that could make the fire and stuff. And some people thought it was just like an escaped lunatic.
So. I mean, to be able to leap that high, it makes you wonder, like, was that the descriptions of it being able to jump so high? Was that just, I mean, for all we know, it could have been a freaking person who just was able to like leap, like urban free running or parkour. And when you haven't seen that before, when you try and describe what that is, if you see a giant fence and someone could just vault over the thing like it was nothing, was that something that could have happened? But then gadgets and stuff like that, I don't really buy, and that's the sort of thing, like even now, if I think to myself, your average sized person who could leap 9-10 feet into the air, like, I'm not really thinking of anything that does that. And yeah, no, it's a weird creature. And then it did cause such a stir, like people all over were seeing these things, and it could have just been, it's now popular in the news and that spreads and people are all excited about it.
I don't know what the, how far in between sightings, like the time gap in between, because if it was spread out a bit, could it have been something or someone that had gone up country and where there was sightings further up? Or
I know in the Victorian era there was a fascination in like the occult, because that's the sort of time period where, I don't know if it was
where
towards
like
the
seances and all
yeah,
that
exactly,
kind of
and
stuff,
you see like this ectoplasm craze and, and people trying to disprove it, and there was a whole sort of excitement around spiritualism and the occult, I guess you'd call it, and that was a big craze and that was spread. So I don't know whether it was just the right time and the right place where there was a fascination for this sort of thing, and now all of a sudden when people are messing around with speaking to the dead and all this, you've now got devils running around in like nice fucking suit jackets and leaping over things and stuff.
And that's a fact for anyone out there watching that doesn't know. That's how night vision came about, wasn't it? Because the person was trying to debunk these seances to see whether they was using trickery during it, and that's where the night vision become invented. But now people have kind of started to use it in investigation. But then, you do catch things like orbs and stuff moving that you wouldn't usually be able to see.
Well, I think night vision's good because the more physical side of things, where if something moves or you want to keep an eye on stuff like that, it's good for capturing that stuff. But if I was going to say like spirits and stuff like that, I don't know, it's probably a bit more complicated. But I think was it just like a right time, right place where the country was gripped by this sort of thing? So of course this is the perfect type of creature and the perfect time to capture like stuff like that, because there are like stories and like sort of folk things that exist all up and down the country. Like in the West Country, there's a lot of like hellhounds or like escaped creatures that supposedly run. There's still like X-Small beasts and stuff like that. Obviously, it was a real big cat, but a lot of people, this whole like in this part of the country, it's very much animal type creatures. Or
there was one even when me and my mate were young, like called the Shuck, which is like
I've heard of Black Shuck, but I don't know if it would be the same thing.
I think it's probably the same thing. Yeah, me and my mate used to be on the phone to each other at night talking about it. And that was a long time ago. But man.
Yeah, no, in the West Country, and obviously now going over to sort of like more towards the east of the country as well, it's more creature based than it is man sort of spirit type thing.
And if we ever get to that what's that derelict church, I don't know, it's like just a good hour and a half away from here, but there's the one with the little kind of crypt bit, and if you walk around it 3 times or something, you're supposed to get the hellhounds come out. So. And that's the one where Arthur Conan Doyle got his inspiration for Hound of the Baskervilles. So if we ever get to go there, I'm walking around that thing and I'm seeing if anything happens.
I mean, hellhounds are like, they've inspired a lot of things over the years. Even when I was growing up playing Call of Duty Zombies, every 5 rounds there's everyone just calls dogs, but it's basically just a bunch of hellhounds that attack you. So like they exist in the culture. But yeah, out here it's mostly, it's not like man type spirits. It's always like sort of like beast type creatures, or like elf / fairy / some folk creature that you get. So for it to be specifically very man looking but then still have that beast aspect to it kind of makes sense. it is weirdly consistent with both the folk sort of culture in the country, but also in the Victorian times, the well-dressed, looking like a gentleman in his suit. That also very much fits the time, and it makes you wonder if this was something that was about. Is it trying to blend in, or would it look like that? And why is it not just a crazed beast like we would normally think of something now? Why did it have to fit that gentlemanly aspect of the culture, which doesn't really exist now or isn't prevalent, but then it would have been? It is just the perfect cryptid or creature of its time, which is a weird thing because it just vanished.
I wonder what kind of like the paranoia was like back then and all, because you think from where we are now back to then, like from them back to the 1600s when like the witch trials were popular, and that
would have been about the same.
I wonder if things were still a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, in saying that, like witchcraft and the worry of witches wasn't really as big then. But then I think the last person to be like tried for witchcraft in the UK was in like the 1940s. Was a Scottish woman. So that there was still but I don't know if that was so much like a hysteria and a fear as it was a technicality in law where these things were happening and they had to deal with it. Because I think she was, as far as I know, I don't know whether she was from Edinburgh. I could be crucified for that. She was a Scottish lady, and I don't know whether she was doing seances and stuff like that in the 40s. And that was it. She was predicting events that were going to happen in the future, and one of which was she predicted the sinking of a submarine in World War II, and then it happened. And because it happened, they were they started by investigating her, thinking that she might be a spy. And then the technicalities in the law being around witchcraft and the occult, they then arrested her for that. So that was like the last, and obviously that's in the 40s. So it's still quite prevalent in, grandparents. Most people's grandparents were born sort of around the 40s and stuff like that. So it's not that far back.
It's like my daddy was born in 1945. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's not too far back at all. So that would have been about. But this doesn't have that same aspect of like witchcraft and the fear of like sort of stereotypical mysterious old lady. This just seems to be something of its own creature, and I don't really know what. It's like a very Victorian ghost story for a city that's terrified by a murderer. They don't know who he is, and also they're scared of devils. Very Christian based, sort of like things you shouldn't fuck about with, basically. But yeah, then accounts of it just vanished, and that was it. We don't really hear it.
So if it was actually saying it died or whatever.
If it was an odd creature that we don't understand, what could it be? Was it it's like I don't know the who it was who wrote it now, but there's that character Fungus the Bogeyman, where they're like a creature that live underground across the world, and at night they have to come up and scavenge for like food and things like that, and then they like if they happen to encounter any sort of humans, they sort of like scare them, so they run away, and then they just scuttle back off and get back underground. Have we got these weird creatures? One that it drifted too far into territory of man, and
I know there's even I don't know where it is. I can't remember, but I was watching a video ages ago, and he was talking about there's like I don't know if it's just like a mountain range or something, but the Native Americans say, do not go in there, like around that area on your own, because there's things in there that are gonna do you harm.
Yeah, Native American like spirituality and sort of fear is quite interesting because they do have like spirits that are based around mountains that can possess and take over. Like I think I've forgotten the name of it. It's not sort of like it's not Wendigos. There you go. So they're like the cannibal spirit that can take over, and that kind of ties in almost somewhat similar to like skinwalkers and like medicine women that are bad and stuff like that. That does exist in that way. But that's what's interesting in the difference of that to then is that seems to be like not necessarily a physical being that's going to harm you until someone is possessed by it after like eating human flesh and then just getting taken over in frenzy. This is very like there's almost no spiritual aspect to it. It is a physical beast that's sort of like in line almost with man in a way that's just up and coming and then gone.
That's another thing that I find interesting. That I don't know if anyone else watching has ever watched The Missing 411 by David Paulides, where he talks about just people that like he's mainly in America, but he has done a few like from across the world. But it's like people that just go out hiking on their own and that, and then they just go missing without a trace. And you know, and even like groups, they're like with a family, and like one of them just drops back a little bit, and then suddenly they're gone. No one ever finds them again. You know, nothing.
And there's no like traces of like a person being lost and struggling to survive in an area or nothing.
And
like
they've
that.
even had weird ones where I think it was like a 2-year-old went missing, and then his body was found like miles away up a mountain. Like there's no way like a little kid could have got up there. Like there's some strange mysteries to it. And they'll have ones where they'll find the people's clothes just folded up and put neatly somewhere and stuff like that. Yeah, it's freaky and weird.
Well, because there are creatures in folklore across the world where you could supposedly just be taken for like time. Like I know in sort of, I don't know if it's technically Celtic, I suppose so, but I already said one F word I shouldn't normally say, but the FAE creature, they like you have this mushroom circles or like parts of the forest that are supposedly like their kingdoms and the entrances to their kingdoms, and there are sometimes stories where like you've had Irish farmers whose family keep the land but technically don't keep it because they don't claim they own it. They'll have tourists who've heard about the area and they go there, and these farmers like warn them, don't go specifically to this part because this belongs to them, and if you go there I don't know what's going to happen to you. And obviously they're always like, oh yeah sure, we've come here just to do this basically, and then they'll go there and they'll get calls at 3 o'clock in the morning with people screaming and like trying to run and leave the place, and they don't really understand what's happened. They've seen things and then that's that. But then there are some cases where supposedly people just up and vanish. They claim that these creatures have taken them and time works differently or something, and these people just up and vanish, and then they just come back, walk into the forest and walk out years later. There are like stories like that where you hear about it where like someone will walk into a forest, they vanish and they come out years later, as if for them a fairly shorter time has passed, but for us it could have been years, and people are confused and they don't really understand what's happened.
I wonder if that's anything to do with creatures, or there's just some weird time paradox thing somewhere.
It's too well spread in the world that like this happens in the British Isles, this happens over in the States, and this happens the world over, that people just keep vanishing and showing up with a strange sense of time that's gone.
I even heard one story, I'm sure it was David Paulides that was talking about, and all where there was one young girl that went missing and come back, and then I'm sure she said like the big hairy creatures were looking after her and stuff.
Yeah, could it be Sasquatch?
Yeah, or like I can't remember if it was like a Dogman thing or something, or like she was saying like the wolves took her, and they were looking after her, something like that. But yeah, that's
there is weird accounts world over of people disappearing. So could this be a sort of a creature from over that side, or some creature that does have these weird abilities to show up and disappear, and it's for extended time has come out and looked about and seen what's going on in the human world?
It's all right talking about these things. When you're in the middle of a forest or something, you start thinking about it. You're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, it is likelihood that we'll be walking through a dark forest tomorrow night. So I'm just like, that's when it's going to hit me, and I'll be like, oh shit.
Yeah, and that's quite a little trek for it.
Well, that is.
It's at least 15 minutes.
First time we went there, it was fun on the way there. And when I was walking back, it was one of those like every alarm bell was going off.
Because I think it was still a bit light when we was going, wasn't it?
When we were going, it was
and
quite
then
bright.
When we come back, it was
pitch black,
full on dark.
That was one of those ones where it was like, I'm going to keep talking and try and make jokes and like just ignore where the fuck I am. Everything in my body is going, watch out, what's this? And I'm just going to ignore it and keep walking.
Yeah, if I was on my own, I'd really be freaked
out. That'd be one of those ones where I'd be frozen in like fear. Like I know I've got to get through it, but I don't want to walk through this. And I don't want to have to go through there. Yeah, so even just looking him up, his Wikipedia page, which obviously take Wikipedia with a pinch of salt because anyone can edit it and there's a lot of potential misinformation, but it groups it as a potential hoax, mass hysteria, a demon or phantom.
Of the UK's urban legends, isn't it?
Yeah, but I find that the hoax, obviously, naturally it could be that. It's a strange creature to be able to fake, given its sort of like physical abilities. But mass hysteria, that's what intrigues me, because it did spread like crazy. And that doesn't, even with hellhounds or creatures like that, they have like a set area that they sit within and where sightings are, but they don't tend to spread. It's sort of like, this is your area, this is your sort of stomping ground of this creature, and that's where it is. Someone at this part of the country has not heard of this thing and will go there and learn about it at best, but that's it.
And I always wonder, what did the very first person see to come up with that?
Yeah.
Like something must have happened. I wouldn't have just suddenly thought, oh, I'll just make this up.
Well, yeah. Well, the distinct things about this creature, how it looks can sometimes be. There are some sort of like different accounts of it. Sometimes it's more feral. Sometimes it's more sort of well kept and gentlemanly. But the commonality is its physical ability to run and jump.
Yeah.
That's quite a weird specific detail, right? And you don't often hear about creatures that are able to leap so high. It's like usually you get like creatures that will like stalk and they're low and quiet and very like sort of stereotypically predatory in nature, which would be understandable for people to be freaked out by because we're kind of attuned to worry and be aware of that sort of thing. This is not what biologically we would have been hunted by, we think. Or not like, we're not attuned to a creature that would be like this. And even in nature, I can't imagine anywhere else there would be a 6 foot tall creature that was shaped roughly like a man that could leap crazy heights and all this sort of thing. The only thing I can think of that would be similar to that description is when they found those like chimps that were like 6 foot tall. I don't remember where that was, but those sort of creature. That I could imagine would fit the bill, but what would that be doing in Victorian England? And I can't even think physically what a creature like that would be. But when we've sort of talked about like creatures sort of disappearing into the forest or taking people and people come about, could there be something in that where something's come out and watched and observed and then vanished again? So it's persisted for a good 70 years, if that's the case, because if you're saying it was in the 1830s and now this was published in 1904.
So unless it's multiple people, it's definitely not a person, because the age you would have gone through, it wouldn't have been leaping around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could always be that you've got this creature that's sort of shown up and now people are aware of it. And then people start to take advantage of that by dressing up as this creature and sort of like, could be the sort of mass hysteria side of it where people are trying to push this hoax, especially if people are sort of like financially motivated. If you've got people making novels about it and stuff, then yeah, there's something to that. But very weird creature just up and vanish like that. Yeah, popular in its time due to the tales of its bizarre appearance and ability to make extraordinary leaps. Yeah, it even says here that it has the clawed hands and the eyes that resembled red balls of fire. One claimed that beneath a black cloak he wore a helmet and a tight-fitting white garment like an oilskin. See, that's the helmet part of it. That's the first time I'm even hearing about that. But the consistent things is like the strange skin, the sharp claws and stuff like that. It even says there's a counterpart in Prague. I wouldn't even know how to say that. Purak, the spring man of Prague. Let's look at this creature. I don't think there's really there's much more to this.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's just one of those short-lived.
So, it said that there was apparently he would wear a helmet and stuff like that. This spring man of Prague, look, he's got like a helmet on with a black cloak. So could it be that stories start to get mixed and matched in time?
Yeah, maybe.
Although this was only this was in the 1940s. It was a cartoon. So this one's is purely... Oh no, this one, it claims that this person was known to have been seen around 1939 to 1945. So in the war.
Right, yeah.
Claimed to have been a member of the SS. Oh no, fighting the SS. Yeah, that's an odd one. So separate to Spring Heel Jack, maybe.
Yeah.
So that Spring Heel Jack was known to be in suburban London, the Midlands and Scotland. So getting about.
It's an odd one. The only long persevering one I know of is my favourite, the Dog Man.
Yeah.
Which have been reported for friggin' hundreds of years and even to this day still.
Yeah. I mean, things like Dogmen and stuff like that, they intrigue me because it wouldn't be impossible for there to be creatures that we don't know about if they're good at keeping to themselves. And you know, even to this day, there are people that go out sort of like looking for the potential of there being like wild cats up and down the country, or wild dogs up and down the country.
Well, and now they've actually got DNA evidence of wild cats in the UK, haven't
so
they?
there is that persisting of sort of like creatures that we don't know. And I think we do tend to get ourselves carried away in the fact that we know so much of the like so many creatures that exist about, that it's impossible for us to not know that something could be out there. So that's what's interesting about that. But like I said, the thing that intrigues me about Spring Heel Jack is it is so, it has that beast aspect to it, but it's also very, like, it says it acts quite gentlemanly, and it's very like man-like in its way, which is what's intriguing about it. It just if it did sort of start in London and was very persistent around the suburban areas and then spread, it is not surprising that a city that had a serial killer, you know, like Jack the Ripper, and this is Spring Heel Jack, and they're both known for their beast-like qualities and their ability to cause havoc, attack women and run away. And would it be half surprising for them to be terrified of seeing this type of creature? And obviously Jack the Ripper known for mutilating victims. This creature has sharp claws that, although it's not said to have torn people apart, could have done, but rather than tearing people apart, it's attacking women and ripping their clothes to shreds instead. So what's going on with that? And how much, if there were criminals, or if Jack the Ripper was about and he's gone, right, I'm going to change my tactics here, I'm going to start wearing some different clothes, too many people know about me. You know, what is there to that? And why did it vanish as well? That's what I'm intrigued about. You wouldn't get that in today, like sort of like today's time. Granted, there are like phones and like recording equipment and stuff that would make this sort of thing way more difficult.
And I suppose the closest thing to it was Mothman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When was that, in the 60s?
Yeah, that was I think 66 to 69 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was a relatively short span of time, whereas this is a lot longer a span of time. But.
Yeah. But like, nowadays obviously we have a lot more technology, and I wonder if that's why there's not so much stuff seen or talked about nowadays. I know there is like the cryptids and that, but there was a lot more weird stuff back then. But now everyone's so busy on their phones or watching TV, and so much information going around that people are distracted with what's out there in the environment.
Well, yeah, people aren't going out as much to find things or to see things. Well, people are now going out with intention of finding things, which is always sort of like adds a new dynamic to finding these creatures.
What we do.
Yes, what we do. And I mean, like it's a lot easier to be able to prove if this sort of thing is found, but it makes me wonder if there are creatures that are aware, and you know, there are these creatures that exist somewhere in their own time, or with they able to cross realities in some way. If they don't want to be found, or they don't need that attention or want that attention, could it be that not seeing them is because there are a few people now out in a forest that aren't traceable in some way, that could just go gone? Because the only places they still talk about these happening are like forests that are off the beaten track, places that haven't been torn down. Now, like the country and the world 100 years ago and how it was built 150 plus years ago was very, very different. Like there was a lot more nature, a lot more forestry, a lot more land that was untouched, and you know, land that wasn't developed. Obviously, London would have still been a lot bigger, but even in 1830s, 1850s, London was tiny by comparison to what it is now. So there's a lot more area and history attached to it. So could that be contributing to it in some way? If something doesn't want to be found, it's a lot easier to be found in a time where everyone's got a smartphone and there's a lot of CCTV and stuff, so maybe that contributes to it. Or maybe the rise in people's ability to be able to film stuff is why we're not seeing this stuff anymore, because it was elaborate hoaxes and it was sort of things like this that it was never real, but it was able to be carried because of the hysteria and the sort of the zeitgeist, I guess, around it, that can't exist now, because people just don't, like, folk culture is dying anyway, as like tradition is dying, like celebrations and music and all of the things that would have come with that are dying anyway. We're kind of in this weird world where people are growing up as products of the wider world because their childhood exists on the internet, where they're exposed to things from all over the world.
It's more technology based nowadays than...
Like, you would have gone from a time where, your grandparents or your parents would have like family recipes and celebrations they had that they were particular to them. They'd have certain ways of doing things that don't really exist now. And now you've got kids who grow up in one continent who are obsessed with the beliefs of fashions and cultures and know more about what happens on the other side of the world than they did what happened 50 years ago in the land they were born in. Not necessarily saying that that's bad. I think, people are just evolving differently now, but is it surprising that the fear... Yeah, I don't like it either, but I think cultural exchange is great, but losing your own is kind of bad. But it is fascinating to see that we are growing up in a time where kids, as the generations go further and further onwards, are culturally sort of like ambiguous, just worldwide. So maybe part of the reason we're losing this fear and sort of like losing touch with that folk side is because we're losing touch with it in general. I have actually seen, just as I got back from work, I was laying in bed about to fall asleep, and I saw, I don't know if it was a YouTube short of a creature that was supposedly, I don't know if it's still around or whether it was sort of like a while back. I don't have any massive information about it. But all I do know is that it was a creature that was sort of like 6 foot plus with like dark owl type feathers across its body, except it had the face and hair of a woman. So I'm gonna be delving. Yeah, moth woman. I'm gonna be diving into that and doing some research of that, and I think that could be a potential case file. I would say we could do a case file on Spring Hill Jack, but I don't feel like it's not locked in as something enough for me to want to do something about it. I mean, if we wanted to do like a video that was more about sort of like spiritualism and sort of like the occult of the Victorian times and include that in it, I think that'd be really cool. And if you guys did want to see something like that, where you want to see a kind of timeline or like facts about history in the Victorian times, specifically based around, well, I guess they call it spiritualism. That was sort of like what was known as the occult, sort of seances and cryptids or creatures of the time and folklore.
I can imagine it being something like, like V for Vendetta, when like you had the original like gunpowder plot and then the V for Vendetta is like a modern version. I wonder if we'll get like a modern Spring Hill Jack kind of thing.
That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? That'd probably be turned into like a Marvel superhero type movie or villain movie, wouldn't it? Jumping away and leaping in. It is weird. You don't really get like superheroes and stuff, but this is like an anti-hero of the Victorian age with crazy borderline supernatural abilities. But that's weird as well. It's not like he can't fly, he's not incredibly strong or nothing like that. He can just jump particularly high. Like, it's a weird... Imagine it was just some free runner or a person who had an ability to climb and move in an urban way really well, and it's just taken over people's minds in that time.
Yeah, it's possible. Like, that's the thing, isn't it? If you never experience it yourself, you can't say for sure.
Well, yeah, exactly. I doubt in the 1800s you would have been seeing people doing parkour and watch someone just easily manoeuvre their way over a 9 foot tall gate and gone, there's something to that. And someone's seen it and then they've told this person and then they've gone, yeah, I saw that. They looked a bit strange, and then it just divulges from there and turns into this crazy thing. Well, I mean, shit, look how we've just sat here and gone from that to Wendigos to people disappearing. Could just be conversations like this that spawn this whole new creature. The ability for human beings to create characters and ideas is insane. I like the idea of, imagine if in 1,000 years someone comes across a Darth Vader figurine and they're like, what is this? This crazy metal man with a red glowing sword. And what people would have thought of that. Imagine all of our stories and just all of it are just the Star Wars of thousands of years past.
Can't imagine what life will be like in 1,000 years. We'll probably have fucking killed each other by then, the way things are going. But
I was going to say we don't have to be around to worry about it, but then after seeing that guy who's like working on like figuring out the secrets of human aging, I was going to say we might actually hang about and still be around, so who bloody knows.
You've got them jellyfish, haven't you, that live forever.
Yeah, there are multiple creatures that biologically don't die.
Even sharks, get injured. I don't know if all of them. Some sharks live for like hundreds of years.
Oh yeah, there was a story about a shark that would have been around in the 1700s, so it would have seen like the the 7 Years War in America, and then Declaration of Independence and crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, but the jellyfish one, it says it would never die. The only reason they usually die is because they're killed by a predator. So,
yeah.
But
Aren't lobsters sort of the same? They sort of just keep shedding and growing, and there's scientists have even said, or like marine biologists have even said, there are potential in deep waters for lobsters that could be the size of like buses, because they don't, like, they just shed and keep growing. Biologically, they don't die that way.
That's crazy.
And it's the same situation with the jellyfish. They although as far as I know with the jellyfish, they kind of start in like a grow up from like not a larval phase, but like a young phase up through adolescence, and then as they get to old age, they just reverse the process. Whereas lobsters, I think they just keep growing and shedding and growing and shedding. But
crazy stuff.
Yeah, there is some. See, you talk about spring-heeled jack being a weird creature, then you the lobsters the size of buses and jellyfishes that just reverses the friggin' age of itself. The world is crazy. Who knows what's going on out there? Yeah, but from fear of just going off and veering into another rambling session, that will conclude our podcast on spring-heeled jack and cryptids in general and strange spiritualism and whatever we've ended up going on about. So yeah, there we go. There is the Spring-heeled jack podcast, if you can call it that. Let us know what you think about this creature, if you know anything about it, or if there are any cryptids, creatures, or folk tales from your area that you want to share with us. If there's anything similar that you've heard about, let us know, because I'd love to hear across the world if there are similar creatures that have been bouncing around the place, causing havoc and hysteria. Don't take anything we say for fact in this, because it is just casual conversation and talking about this. If you want to see some actual historical facts and potential spooky happenings, feel free to check out our case files, which I'm sure will be linked in an iCard, so you can check out all of that. As we said in many times in this video, we have an investigations playlist where we go out and look for these things for ourselves. We did go out and look for dogmen, although that wasn't a investigation. It kind of felt like it was just a day out, but we've gone out and done that.
We should go back there again, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be a cool one. But yeah, investigations, you can check that out in a playlist as well if you want. We have our we have our reactions playlist that you can check out. We react to some of the internet's finest spooky happenings, some hoaxes and funny moments, so you can enjoy that as well. We have our shorts as well, which lead on to some fun and exciting videos if you want to take a look at that. And I think that's everything significant. And we do have our podcast playlist. You can check out more of these if you want to see something a bit more relaxed. I think that's all of our major series I mentioned. Sometimes I forget to see if we've got this one or not.
So, yeah.
Podcast, case files, investigations, reactions.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
And there'll be more in the future. Woo.
Possibly a new one coming.
Yeah, possibly a new one. So fingers crossed we'll be able to bring that to you soon. Thank you very much for all your support. We appreciate especially hitting that 500 mark. This is an awesome moment for us, and we're going to keep delivering some fantastic content to keep growing the channel. We hope to catch you again on the next one. Goodbye.